the analogy that I'm getting here is that the economy before this was a toothless crack whore on heroin. And right now, the economy is a toothless crack whore on heroin with coronavirus in the hospital. This is Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Radowski of WeAreChange.org, joined today by John Sneisen. He is a financial historian. And, of course, Tim Picciott. He is a financial planner, and he is the Liberty Advisor. Now, in this particular video, I specifically wanted to talk to everyone about Trump's latest announcement that the country could be reopened in 1 week after the lockdown, because to him, the cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. He even went as far as to saying that he would defy doctors' orders only because he wants to open the economy. He wants America running again. He wants business to be open, and that's an extremely dangerous gambit. What do you guys think of it? What are going to be the larger implications of this if this goes through, and what's going to happen if this doesn't go through? Whoever wants it takes it.
Yeah,
John,
Tim, you go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
So I'll go. So you know what's really funny here is that they're just bailing out left, right, and center all these corporations that were bankrupt. That what was it? Boeing was doing 97% of their cash flow they're shoved into share buybacks to push up their price, and then we wonder why their airplanes fell out of the sky. Of course.
And they also outsourced the programming of that to third world countries to make save a bunch of money. Yeah. And they're like, oh, the third world didn't program this effectively. Yeah. They sent all their jobs to India, right, to get all their lucrative no-bid contracts in the United States, because they also make bombs and weapons in the military-industrial complex. I mean, you want to talk about the U.S. economy? That's pretty much the large majority of it. Sorry, John, I cut you off.
No, we also have an article on screen where it was Boeing, which demands a $60 billion taxpayer bailout, refuses to give the U.S. an equity stake. So what they mean by that is Trump said, if we're going to give you all this money, we want to at least be able to participate in your potential growth. And so what this means is now they wanted to have basically have Boeing stock, and now Boeing's saying, you're not getting any of our stock. We just want our money. We've bought off so many politicians. So, thank you for playing. We're Boeing.
Well, it's like in Norway, they own a whole bunch of different stocks in different companies. For example, Equinor, they own 51% stake in the biggest oil company in Norway. And that's where, you get state-owned capitalism, they call it. Or I call it just pure socialism, where they, hold a majority stake in corporations. This is just another, excuse for the government to take more power over corporations in a socialist way. And of course, that's totally opposite of what we're getting told about Trump. For the government actually taking a stake in a corporation. And we know how efficient, for example, in Canada, Bombardier has been, bailed out so many times by the Canadian government, and other. That's another air company.
It's a beautiful Trump stake, though. It's a huge Trump stake.
But hold on, I want to pose a question to you guys, because I mean, Trump let in Goldman Sachs. He pretty much let in the swamp to have control of all these bailouts that there's no disclosures of where the majority of it goes to. But at the same time, he's looking at drastic measures to end this crisis that has been benefiting them for so long. But at what cost? So that's the thing. That's kind of contradictory viewpoints, because at one hand, he does let Goldman Sachs do whatever they want, but two, he wants to end this crisis so they could stop doing that. What do you guys make of that?
Well, I mean, think of it this way, though. I mean, the most amount of money is made during these types of crises. So if you're somebody like Goldman Sachs or any of these big mega corporations or Boeing, your smaller competitors, they end up going out of business. But the big guys, they get to, have their clout and say, hey, we've got this many hundreds of thousands of jobs, or this amount of millions are on the line, or billion of people or jobs on the lines, or these many billions of dollars to the economy is on the line. So so if everything crashes down, then these guys end up getting, like $60 billion bailouts, and then they can use part of that $60 billion bailouts to then buy up some of their competitors who went out of business. And then when everything ends up going back up, they've already consolidated, and now they've gotten rid of their competitors. Just look what happened in 2008. We have more centralized control of the banking system. The big banks all too big to fail banks all got even bigger. Nothing happened to them. Nobody went to jail. Even Eric Holder even said that HSBC was too big to jail. So I mean, and even look at how this entire monetary system got started to begin with. You had essentially the Bauer family, which really was the Rothschild family. They had a red shield in their door. Red shield in German is Rothschild. They ended up, I guess the real quick version of this is they ended up, knowing that Napoleon had lost the Napoleonic War. They spread a rumor saying Napoleon had won. It brought the British stock market down to zero. And so you might think, so it's sort of like this, where they bring the stock market down, and then they got to swoop in with this other money they had got from a German prince. And then when people found out that Napoleon had actually lost the war, they ended up winning having essentially owning the British economy. And that's a super cliff note version of that, because the main thing we want to talk about was Trump. But I think this could.
Well, just really quick, just to cut you off, I asked Lord Jacob Rothschild about that directly, the whole Napoleon thing. He's like, "Oh, no, I don't know anything about that." I'm like, "Come on, you gotta be."
Well, that's how Norway. That's how Norway actually lost. Like we used to be part of Denmark. Then we got sent over to Sweden in 1814, when we actually lost our. We had our our government. We created our constitution, but then we got sold over to Sweden because they were on the winning side in the Napoleonic War. So yeah, no, they're just full of these bankers. Like what's happening here is that these bankers are doing deep behind the windows. They're making mass amounts of money and all the volatility that's going on. And today, the reason why it's going so fast up and down is because most of it is computers running our trading. There's not really very many people left that are actually physically trading stocks anymore or using computers. It's most of them are just like algos, high frequency trading bots that are basically set to trade in a certain way on certain aspects. And you see like massive crashes that stops trading at the exchanges, all this stuff. It's happening because these banks they're full of it. And if we were talking about Trump opening up the economy, so there's massive risk on spreading the virus again. You're gonna probably have like millions upon millions very fast that will get the coronavirus, because it's like a flu virus. It spreads very fast into millions upon millions of people. I think it was like 65 million people in the US that got the flu, right? So you're looking at it spreading around. And then on the other side, like that's going to put massive pressure on all the healthcare system that's already is in the gutter. And then you're looking at trying to have the economy function, but the problem is the economy is not functioning. They had to, like, just within a very short period of time, they had to be completely bailed out because they had no money left, because they had so much debt that they were dead. These corporations, they were zombies, roaming around.
Do you want to just let people know what a zombie is? Because there actually is a definite. So a zombie company is actually a company that can't even basically afford to pay its interest. And so that's why they've had to lower these interest rates, go to potentially negative. We do have an article from Rabobank, and it says that many are questioning the point of having a market if the Fed is backstopping everything. And so we don't have capitalism right now. This is complete BS system that we have where,
Comrade Rutsky. Communism. Pure communism.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, no, this is a pure, I mean, it's probably more of like a fascistic type system, but whether it's fascism or communism, it doesn't really matter. It's all just a small amount of people controlling everything and getting richer off all this. And it really, in a free market, it would be much easier to decide what's going on. But we don't have a free market. We have a Fed backstop market. Yeah, if we take a look at the screen here, what's going on in the market right now, the Dow is up 1,600, a little over 1,600 points. The S&P is up over 172. So these are huge moves, 8% and 7% respectively. But the thing is, this is all predicated on the Federal Reserve and other central banks backstopping this market. We have a fake, phony economy, just like everything else that's been going on. And, in the absence of all this money printing, I don't think that we'd actually see any of these gains going on here, Luke.
I mean, just to bring the conversation back to where we started, there's also a Texas lieutenant governor who just came out publicly and said senior citizens would rather die than see the government's economy ruined for their grandchildren. Again, huge gambit, huge risk here, but let's just play in this make-believe world that is our economic system. And let's say Donald Trump opens the economy, everyone goes back to work, everything's fine. Technically, let's just say this is hypothetical. Everything's fine. Will it be enough to save the economy? Will it be enough to bring back the economy to where it was before?
No, you can't bring back the economy. The economy is screwed in the first place. So what we were talking about was zombies. That they're basically corporations that can't pay anything else but the interest on the debt because that's all they can afford. So they never pay down the principal. The debt always increases every single year. And if we're gonna go back to normal, we're also gonna have to see interest rates go up. And with the amount of debt that we have, the payments on that interest is just gonna rise drastically. And when you look at zombies, well, so we got zombie corporation, but we also have zombie nations, zombie states, and zombie counties, because everybody is way beyond debt, indebted up to their ears. They're about to drown, and there's no way out of this. So we think that we can get back to normal in a peak debt environment. Like peak debt, I call when you reach the end of a monetary system when everybody is indebted. There's nobody else to push any debt into. And nobody can afford it because basically the system has come to a standstill. So that's what we're facing. If we try to go back to normal, we'll just end up back at where we are very, very fast. Because look at all the stimulus that have been shoved into the economy. If we even continue this and the Fed stimulus is coming in, we're looking at $3.5 trillion a month if you do it just on regular business days. Every 20 days. Within a month, you pump in 185 trillion. So that's almost a double the amount of the whole balance sheet right now that you're increasing. So they think that you're just going to see more and more money getting shoved into the economy, so much stimulus, everything. This is the end game of a fiat currency system where they're just shoving in so much more, fiat into the system in order to try to save it. But what they're doing is just creating a massive bubble that's just going to collapse in on itself. Because you can try to stimulate the economy, but you're stimulating something, you're giving something for free out that's going to cost you way more on the other side. And there's no way out. You basically are injecting people with heroin and believing that they're going to wane off of heroin. It's not
and we had the former Dallas Fed governor, Richard Fisher, 3 years ago on CNBC said the economy was being held together by heroin and cocaine, and now it's being put on life support using Ritalin. And I don't know if Ritalin is enough. And that was 3 years ago on CNBC. And this is not me saying it. That's the former Fed governor. You go back to 2011, and the Federal Reserve was saying that by 2015, that the Fed funds rate would be 4.25. And at the time I was thinking, okay, well, if the Fed funds rate is 4.25, that means that at the minimum, the government bonds at that point would have to at least be 5, 6, 7%. And okay, take it at 5%. 5% of 20 trillion is $1 trillion a year in interest. How is no one else seeing that there's no way this is possible? And I got in trouble in an email that I wrote to a client because it got picked up through my compliance department for saying that there's no way the Fed could do this in 2011. So, the dirty secret is financial advisors are not actually allowed to give financial advice because we're controlled, and they have to say, and they, limit us as to what we're saying. But there is a big distinction to make between economy and stock market. Those are not synonymous words. I have no doubt that they can make the stock market go up, but making the stock market go up and having the economy getting back together is not the same thing. Giving everybody $1,000 checks, and then maybe that turns into $2,000 checks, turns into universal basic income, turns into turns into this digital dollar, and now the digital dollar can then be used as the means to get the universal basic income, can also be the means to then get negative interest rates, because now if everything is controlled into a digital dollar, they can then take that away from you. And this is just huge news. And I know Luke is just chomping at the bit to get in.
Well, from my understanding of it, the analogy that I'm getting here is that the economy before this was a toothless crack whore on heroin. And right now, the economy is a toothless crack whore on heroin with coronavirus in the hospital. You get rid of the coronavirus, she's still going to be a toothless crack whore on heroin.
Not fentanyl.
Leave it off with you two guys. Close it off here because we got to end this video. Anything else you guys want to say about this Trump plan and everything we discussed? Go ahead.
Well, first off, just tell us how you really feel, and maybe it's more on being maintained on fentanyl or something at this point. But John and I did a video called "The Case for No More Recessions" this summer, and the premise of that video was that they can gain a recession is just 2 negative quarters of GDP. Well, if you have the government just print off trillions of dollars and let's say we go bomb somebody else and go bomb Libya, go bomb Syria, whoever, and now all of a sudden we've injected $1 trillion. Now you've got $1 trillion added to the GDP, but no one's better off. And so the GDP is a terrible measure of this. I wrote a book. If you guys want to text change the news, we'll have it linked down below. It's a one word, change the news. The number is 71441. You'll get my book that is on this exact subject, and then also get my crisis retiring presentation that I gave at 2019 in Acapulco, which was a blueprint on how to get through this if you're 55 to 65 and about to retire. Absolute blueprint. Information's just as valuable today as it was back then. And we'll kick it off to John now.
John?
Well, so this is the last words that I'm going to say. Like, any fiat currency in history has always died within a year. And it's always based upon the trust that this currency will have its value. And with everything that they're doing right now, people are going to see straight through it. And when people go hungry on the streets because they can't afford food, because they're not getting enough currency from the government in modern monetary theory or universal basic income, that's the end. It's kaputska of the whole market, and it's going to be complete mayhem as the financial system totally collapses in on itself, because it's just set to do it that way. But it's all based upon the trust of the public to take the medium of exchange that is forced upon them through legal tender laws. And when that trust breaks, it takes a year, then it's all gone. And believe me, it's not going to be over a year. It's going to be a year. Every single freaking currency that I studied has taken a year to collapse when that trust breaks. So yeah, so you can find me at The Economic Truth. You can find all the stuff there. We're actually doing bankrun.org, where I'm building that up with a news outlet, so you can get news updates from around the world where there's risk of bank runs or what is happening with banks locally, because that is what's going to happen here. And that's why they're so desperate to pull it towards the cashless system. So please check out theeconomictruth.org, find my reports, books, everything that I'm doing there, and go and watch bankrun.org for updates on the banking system.
We just did a whole video on the cashless system on the main channel, youtube.com/wearechange. Check that out. Thank you again so much for watching, and stay tuned for more here on Change the News channel.